instance, and you're not doing it. Should the citizens fold their hands and keep quiet and act citizens of Nigeria? Because you talk about every ward, every local government, every community, one way or the other, right? By the number of the constituencies that are represented in the National Assembly, everyone being represented, whether you are from the north, you are from the south, you are from the east, you are from the west. I mean, look at the number. You are talking about a large parliament with over 357 members, thereabouts, at least currently. We know the figure should be more, but currently as it stands, we have about 356 thereabout members of parliament. And we have never successfully taken this part of the constitution that provides that you can, for instance, recall a lawmaker if a lawmaker is not giving the people the kind of representation that they deserve when they get into office. The only time they tried it, and the only time the people knew the extent of the provisions of the constitution that actually allows that to happen was, of course, the case of Kogi West, you remember, where former Senator Dino Melaye was being, that is a different conversation. Why the people are exercising that power? Is it for the right purpose that they were not getting the best of representation? Or was it for political reasons that, because you are not on the side of the powers that be, then they want to use their powers by all means to get you out of that situation? And you saw the attempt, even while he was on the hospital bed. I mean, for instance, so many things happen in Nigeria. Even while he was on the hospital bed, for instance, what happened? A recall, an attempt was made at a recall, and probably because the people were impressed as against not being displeased by his action, by their representation, he was sent from that recall exercise. Now, if the people, the only time they could get him out of office then was until they went into the polls, and that was where he didn't win his re-election back to the Senate. But that was the first time that process of the law was actually tested. Not many people realize that if your lawmaker is not representing you effectively in governance, is not answerable to you, is not giving you the dividends of the democracy and the governance that you desire, not many people realize that they could actually recall their lawmakers. Some people think they are lawmakers, and that is why some lawmakers go there, enjoy the pleasure of office, whether they sleep in the chamber or they present any motion or bill, or they don't do anything for the 4 years. They go there, enjoy the benefits of that 4 years, and guess what? Even go as far as, and we used to have that in the past, go as far as spending more years. Because it baffles one that you will have a situation where lawmakers have spent 12 years in the parliament. You have a situation where some have spent for as much as 20 years in parliament. And you still have questions as to what have these people done for their people that have chosen them to represent them, and why is it that they continue to elect them for that number of years? Are you saying that those are the only set of people that can give you the kind of representation you need in the parliament? They have done 100% good and fine, and that is why they have continued to remain in office? Or is it because you don't realize that you have the powers to say, look, this part is not answerable to us? For instance, all of the allowances that they get and the likes of them, all of the constituency projects that you don't see, that sometimes you don't see the light of day, where in some cases some people use plywoods or planks and construct a small pathway, and they say that is a bridge, and they commission it in the face of the people, as against the millions and the trillions that would have been collected. And the people cannot ask how much was given for so and so project. Why do we have these projects abandoned and the likes of them? But because they do not have understanding of the role and the responsibilities that they have and the powers that they have, they don't realize that if you elect someone in office, you don't have to wait for 4 years, blessing, for you to be able to recall that individual, for instance. You don't have to wait for 4 years to say that this person is not performing. Can we recall you for failing to perform, for not meeting up our demands? And of course, you replace the person. That is you demanding accountability as a citizen. Can I also that, we have taken it to the grassroots where it matters, where you get that kind of representation from the people, even at the state level, at the level of governance, it should still be the same thing. But unfortunately, people do not understand the position of the laws and the position of the constitution on all of these issues. Now, can I take it to even the government at the center? And I take it to incidents in the past, particularly previous governments, where, because we talked about accountability also mean that you take responsibilities for action. Did you realize that in the previous administration, we had a lot of blame games? I mean,
Absolutely.
that was a dominant factor that played out with previous administrations, where a government came on board, made so many promises, and when you look at certain activities in actions, you ask yourself, the issue of insecurity at the time that played a dominant role. What happened? When we had insecurity, when we had killings, when the economy was not going down so well, what happened? At certain points in time, you would always hear the government of the day then making reference to the government of the past. How is that kind of government accountable to the people?
Okay, so I want to just so we have a clear understanding of what you've made it very clear that Nigerians are currently not holding their representatives accountable, and the representatives are supposed to, hold the executive accountable. What would you say are the challenges that are standing in the way of Nigerians holding their representatives accountable?
Well, I think it's an understanding of the process in itself that gets these people into positions of authority. Because if you don't understand that your power goes beyond electing these people into this position of authority, then you may not also understand the fact that you can actually ask questions when certain things are going wrong, and you can take actions if they fail to answer those questions that you would ask. So you must understand that your role is not just, when they need you, they come for votes. It goes beyond coming to seek for your vote and for your support. You have a role to say, okay, I'm watching this, my lawmaker, for instance. I have put him there. These are certain policies I expect to see come out for me. These are certain issues I expect to see or to hear him address. Now, if he is not addressing all of these issues, if he's not bringing about meaningful development, you can begin to ask him, why is he not doing all of that? And if he fails to, then you begin to wonder, is he fit to occupy that position that he has been given? Let's also bring it for the government at the center. You are talking about the challenges, for instance. Some of them do not feel that they see the need to come down to the level of the people that have put them in office. So when they get there, in the first instance, how much access do you have to these individuals? That's another question for another issue that needs to be talked about. You are getting into a position of office based on the influence of the people that have been put you there. How much access do they have to you? Do you deny them access? Or let me give you a situation of what we have. Instead of people making it easy for people to get access to you, for instance, I take the government at the center, particularly at the presidential level, for instance, which we so much witness on a daily basis. Instead of appointing the right set of people, now you have a situation where people will rather appoint their close allies. Why? These are the people that can tell you, this is what we think you are doing. This is what, praise singers. People would rather have praise singers around them. They would rather have sycophants around them. That will make it seem that, even when it appears that you are taking certain missteps where some actions are concerned, they praise you in such a way that you feel that you are doing good with yourself. And it's only a person that is sincere with himself that will go beyond the four walls of that position of office that he or she occupies to actually determine whether or not, I've taken a policy. How is this policy going to affect the people that matter at the grassroots? For instance, we had a situation where, I take it to the Obasanjo era, for instance, as simple as speaking to the media. I hope you know that that's one of the platforms at which the citizens can they can hold the government accountable. We used to have media chats in the 1999 era, for instance. What happened? Where you have the president interacting with journalists from a few media houses, and they are asking questions about certain policies of government, and of course whether they are good for the people, whether you get it was an avenue for you to discuss. And through some of the questions that you will be asked, right, you could actually get to feel the pulse of what the people are saying, whether directly or indirectly. But what happened? After that era, after the era of the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, for instance, we don't have any of that anymore. So, if you don't have a situation where the people have certain mediums and platforms where they are able to talk to you, where they are able to interact to you, how do they hold you accountable? How can you ensure that you are answerable to them? There is this emperor lifestyle that we see on the part of our politicians today. That, who are you to question me? In fact, can I take you back to an incident that just happened a few years ago, where someone, a politician for instance, was embarking on projects, on tours of some projects embarked on state governors. And a journalist asked a simple question and said, who is bankrolling you? Because that individual at that point in time, we know him as just being a politician. He was not occupying any position in government. Yeah. He was not occupying any party position. And you were showcasing the works, whether for publicity purpose or otherwise. You were showing the good works, which could also be a different thing if the other people also embarked on that kind of journey that you are embarking on, doing a kind of PR and publicity for them. And a journalist simply asked, and that is probably the question, that was probably the question on the minds of several Nigerians, that you are going about here and there, and you know that to travel from one part to another in Nigeria doesn't come cheap. Of course, someone like him will not travel by road, except he's touring the state in itself. He will probably be traveling by air. There will be accommodation provided for him. There will be feeding provided for him. I don't know, blessing. I don't know if you are that generous as a journalist, for instance, that you can take a tour just like that. If you're the management of the Voice of the People, do not say, okay, we are going to take care of your expenses. Even for you to go from here to Gwagalada, for instance, to do investigative journalism, they must file your vehicle for you. They must provide transportation for you. Even if to go to Kuje, if you were in session when the Kuje incident happened, a vehicle must be there available to take you to that destination. But what happened? You had an individual who was going about visiting different states. I mean, not saying it's not good for you to showcase if the governors of those states were really working. But what was the purpose behind that? Did you really show us to the fact that the governors were working, or did you at some point in time create a certain picture of what it is, and in some cases where things were not working, you of course ignored that? And the journalist stands up and says, who is bankrolling you? And what was the response? We saw the individual huffing and puffing. We saw him almost letting all hell loose, and just that single question rubbishing the journalist for asking, because that is his right as a citizen. He understands his right.
Now let's now that we brought politicians into this and we brought politics into it, because I mean we can't talk about governance without politics in a democracy, right? Now we've had we just came out of a quote and unquote, a lot of people call it rubber stamped 9th Assembly. Arguments would come from some school of thought that it is very important for the leading government to have more representation. You know, say like now we have, I think the leadership of the 10th Assembly is completely APC, completely there. Now, is it something that should be encouraged? Does it how do I put this now? Does it make it harder for the legislature to hold the executive accountable when they are all coming from the same place?
Well, I think like we have seen it, yes and no. I will answer that question in two phases, yes and no, especially like we've seen in recent times. Of course, I take you back to the 2015 era where we saw that upset that was created. Now, the upset was created not in the sense that it was an upset from another political party, right? It was an upset that was created even within the political party, which was not the preferred choice of what the leadership composition was supposed to be, and it creates upset. But what did we see happen at that tenure of that particular assembly, the 8th Assembly? It was easy for you to question the actions of the executive, whether good or bad, whether they were policies that will favor the people. Now imagine that all the way from that period of 2015, the party had always had its way. Maybe the situation we have now will not be what we are talking about. Maybe the situation would have been different, because there were so many laws, particularly that people felt were anti-people. People felt were not in the best interest of those that were being led. And you could see the kind of opposition and the kickback against such laws, which did not allow them to see the light of day, as against what we saw in 2019 era, thereabout, where that is democracy for you. The truth is, whether you like it or not, the party of the day, right, is the party that provides the leadership of the legislature. There is no way out about it. But the question you were asking now comes down to how much of an independence of the legislature does that guarantee? Especially when the party does everything possible to ensure that they use their resources to scuttle whatever attempt could be to ensure that it is an opposite group that emerges, a group that probably would have a mind of its own. Because that's the basis of the question you have asked. How much of a mind of their own does the legislature have? Now, the cause of the upset we saw in 2015, we had a legislature that was independent to some extent, a legislature that could not be hoodwinked to say, oh, or be forced or pushed to an extent to say that, oh, do this, and it is a must that you must do this, because you have something that you can hold against whoever is there. No matter, even if you have something that you can hold against the individual, or you want to, remind the individual of how he put you in that position and how he can easily take you out, because that is the other side of this conversation as to why it will be difficult for you to hold the government to account. I mean, when you operate on the system of, oh, I put you there and I can easily take you out, of course it is expected that whatever you throw to the table of whoever is in charge of that arm of government, the person will want to do your bidding. Why? Because the person will not be looking at how do I protect the interests of the citizens. Whether you like it or not, they will tell you, yes, we are there for the interests of the citizens. But when it now comes to that closed door conversation, where the person is boxed to a corner, the person will tell you, in as much as you know that this decision you are making may not necessarily favor the interests of the people, but because you have been given a caveat or you have been warned that if you don't do this, you can easily be kicked out of the way, or something somewhere can be used against you, then you know that it rubs off negatively on the legislature having a mind of its own. But while we understand that there must be a cordial relationship between both the executive and the legislature, we must also understand that to some extent, the legislature must be able to have a free mind, because that is where you can genuinely correct whatever lapses in governance. And don't forget that beyond massaging egos right now, beyond being the rubber stamp that people call them to be, the legislature also has the powers of oversight. So what happens if, for instance, you are doing budgeting and the likes of them, you are preparing your budget and the likes of them, and there are discrepancies in some of the budgetary provisions that have been made. For a country that says that we are not doing so well in terms of revenue generation, even though some of us beg to differ, some people will tell you Nigeria is broke, Nigeria is not. I believe that Nigeria has money. It is where we are putting these monies in, or what purposes we are using these monies for, that we have not been able to align well and say, okay, these are the areas, this is the priority, or to some extent we have not been able to account for, because there are monies that have gone into people's pockets. For instance, Sirica Air, I don't know if I should call it Nigeria Air right now. It's Sirica Air, we must call it, because those are areas that it's not Nigeria Air, it's Sirica Air, because I don't know whether the Nigeria Air is floating or is floating in Sirica's pocket, even though people say he has been cleared of any wrongdoing. But you have situations where some members of the executive act with one form of impunity or the other, and those that should be carrying out oversight on them cannot question them. I remember we had that fiction under previous government where the lawmakers will call the members of the executive, the ministers thereabout, for questioning, to come and answer questions as to why this is happening, why there are discrepancies in this area, and the executive will completely disregard that invitation from the National Assembly. Was it not why this issue of accountability was it not so bad to a point where even the chief executive of the country, the commander-in-chief, the president then, gave an order to the inspector general of police, someone that he can hire and fire at will, and said something happened in a particular place. I am sending you there to go and check what happened. And guess what? He was made to account for what he saw when he went there, only for him to say it didn't go. So if someone that has been appointed by the president says that he doesn't have any reason to be accountable to the president, then how much more those in power, how much more accountable would they be to the citizens who they should be answerable to?
Let's talk about the current government now. We just have a few minutes to wrap up. The current administration now, which is where a lot of people have their eyes. I always say this. I think it's with the after the last administration and the 15th presidency that Nigeria went through, a lot of Nigerians have, there was an awakening of some sort. A lot of Nigerians are very interested in the process and what is going on in governance. And now, all eyes are on the Bola Tinubu administration right now. President Bola Tinubu hit the ground running. Practically, a lot of Nigerians are struggling to even keep up with that. And a lot of policies...
Nigerians are trekking.
At this point, it's safe to say a lot of Nigerians are even crawling already with the kind of hardship that we are seeing. And we can see the presidency coming out to say, oh, Nigerians should be very, patient and sacrifice a whole lot more than they have sacrificed and all of that.
While the pockets of the...
I'm trying my best not to get into that, considering that is an entirely different subject on its own. My concern is with all of these policies that have been put out there, all the policies that have been put in place by this administration, especially now I'm talking about the subsidy removals, most especially. Subsidy has been removed from fuel. Subsidy will be removed from electricity in no distant time. Subsidy might be removed from education with the way that conversations are going and all of that. With the
education should be subsidized.
Well, I mean, with the loan coming out and all, student loan
that's supposed to be the subsidy for the education.
That's supposed to help. Well, what I'm saying, I think the conversation here is when all of these subsidies are being removed and people are out there, hardship and all of that, I don't think the people mind going through it, considering that these monies would be used to benefit the country and get us out of all the debts that we are in and, get us to a better place as a nation. How do we ensure that this government is being held accountable so that we don't get to a place where we are regretting why these policies were even being meted out in the first place?
I think, like I said, still the citizens have the role to play. Of course, there are laws in place also that ensures that the citizens have the relevant institutions are able to ensure that whatever policies and the likes have been implemented, they are followed to the letter. For instance, you have the Press Freedom Act, that's the Freedom of Information Act, which guarantees you the right to find out everything that goes on with government. You also have the anti-graft laws, that should ensure that if you are able to follow up whatever goes into government coffers and exactly how they are being spent. For instance, like you talked about the subsidy situation, right? Now, we've always talked about the fact that the reason why we are at this stage where we have been spending trillions of naira is because of the fact that some Nigerians, for their own selfish interests right now, the monies that should be coming into the country for the development of the country appears to have either found its way out of the country, and of course, whether legal, in fact mostly illegally, right, they found themselves out of the country into some people's private enterprises, into some people's private businesses, and that's why we have not been able to sustain ourselves when it comes to the production of this product. Now, if we say we don't want to get this money should not be going outside again, and we are trying to save this money and bring them back inside, the question now becomes, these monies that we are trying to save right now, what are we also going to be doing? Because that's the reason why government has been spending so much trying to make the product available. Now, if the product we say we can make available internally, and we have enough funds internally that we can save, right? What will the government be doing with those funds? Because it is one thing for you to say the people should, that you can feel the pain of the people, right? They should be able to bear it for a little while. But what key areas? And this is where the citizens need to begin to ask questions. If you are going to be saving a certain amount of money through the removal of subsidy, the areas where it is now becoming a burden for Nigerians to be able to live and get the kind of standard of living that they deserve, what areas would you be deploying these monies and these resources into to ensure that the current pain of the subsidy situation that they are dealing with, they do not have to suffer it for so long? For instance, you talk about infrastructure, you talk about health, you talk about education. These are activities on a normal day that would help the country's economy grow.
And when you talk about the economy growing, what does it mean? You are providing employment for the people. You are providing, you are giving them a better lifestyle. Not that the monies that we say we don't want to enter some people's pocket. And now I will still make reference, no matter how much reference you don't want to make. We are now putting it into other places that is funding the lifestyle of the political class. So when you have such disparity and the people cannot see the essence of why they have to take on such suffering, the long suffering that you have told them to take, and then the political class who is supposed to take after that each take care of their own interests, they are not doing anything to even ease the load, then it becomes a problem. So you must be able to, at every point in time, channel and find out these resources, what are we using them for, of whose benefit, how do we at the low level benefit? Because right now you are either rich or you are poor, especially when you look at your income, when you look at the standard of living. Anyway, the poor has been told to breed, so I don't know whether they are still breeding or they are seriously looking for oxygen to be able to survive. But the citizens have a role to play. You must be able to hold your government to account. Every kobo that enters into government account, every kobo that goes out of government, we must be able to find out what exactly is happening to those funds. Are some people still diverting the funds, or are they being judiciously used for the purpose that they? Now, if they are not being judiciously used for the purpose that be, then bless it. It's as simple. We have relevant agencies in place that can go after individuals, whoever they are, no matter how highly placed. If they have violated the laws and if they are doing things for their own selfish interests, stealing public funds and pocketing them, then why don't you go after them and ensure that either they return all of these funds, for instance, or they are made to face the wrath of the law if they fail to do the needful, and if they have tampered with the nation's funds in one way or the other. It's as simple as that. Everybody has a role to play, and the citizens, which is paramount, cannot afford not to be interested in whatever is happening, because they are also major contributors. Every money that we make in this country, whether internally or externally, citizens and any money that is spent in government, citizens are contributors. That is why we call it taxpayers' money. There is money that you contribute, and there is money that it goes into government coffers, which the citizens contribute to. So, if citizens are contributing with their taxpayers' money, then why should they not be able to get answers to what they are using their taxpayers' monies for?
Very interesting questions being asked there. I wish we had more time because there are so many angles to this that we haven't looked at. But time isn't our friend at the moment. Thank you so much, Mr. Kunle Adeni, for coming into the building. It's always interesting to have you around. Thank you very much. Well, matters continues real shortly. We have had this conversation. The question is, are you holding your lawmakers accountable? Are you holding your representatives accountable? What are you doing to make the process better? Okay, I'm Chinwe Blessing. I'm going to be back in a quick bit with Formula U. Don't go anywhere.